Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm your host, Mac Pritchard. I'm also the founder of Mac's List. It's a job board in the Pacific Northwest that helps you find a fulfilling career. One of the best ways to get good at job hunting is to talk to people who do it well. That's why once a month, I interview a Mac's List reader who found a job they love. Our guest today is Michelle Brence. She's the digital content manager at the Oregon Health and Science University, also known as OHSU. Learning about the dream job she has today at OHSU wasn't hard for Michelle. The position was publicly advertised on the job board. In a story you can find on the Mac's List website, Michelle says her biggest challenge was deciding to leave journalism, a field where she'd worked for 25 years, in order to start a new career in health communications. Michelle, why do you love your job?
Oh, gosh. I love the mission-driven quality of being at OHSU. I think a lot of people are motivated to become journalists because they do want to make the world a better place. They want to make a difference. They need money from their job, just like everybody else, but that's usually not the first thing they think about. So when you're looking as a journalist to change into something else, most of us really want to preserve being part of something bigger and something that makes the world a better place. And I really feel that here.
Well, let's talk about your job search. You changed careers, moving from journalism to health communications. How did you know it was time to make the switch?
That was the hardest part. I'd really been thinking about it for years as the journalism industry became increasingly difficult. We'd had a series of layoffs at the Oregonian where I was working. But I loved what I did. I loved the people I worked with. I trained to be a journalist my entire life and had finally reached a place where I was doing my best work. So it was really hard. And I also didn't want to leave Portland. And I have 2 kids, and they were both in high school at the time and, had their soccer teams and their friends and everything in place. So I really had to just make the decision at when was a good time to switch careers, and felt like I'd kind of hit the point where if I was going to change careers, it needed to be soon. And then I just had, literally it was very strange. Just one day, I just had this feeling kind of wash over me, like, now is the time. You need to look now. It's now. And so I sat down at a computer and looked and found the advertisement for this job on Mac's List was the first one I saw, which is kind of crazy.
Do you have any sense of what inspired you to sit down that day? Because I know from reading your story, you'd applied for other jobs in the past, and it sounded like you didn't get very far. Can you talk about why this time was different?
Yes, I actually did okay. I think I made it to the top 2 or 3 in another very good job a couple of years before this, but my heart was not in it, and I think that showed a little bit. The person who got the job is very well qualified. They may have gotten it anyway, but I couldn't help but feel like, that probably showed and probably didn't help. And so I knew that when I was ready to apply again, I really had to jump into it with both feet. And it's just, I think I finally just reached that point of, I had recently turned 50 and felt like, I had a lot of work life left, but maybe not a lot of time left to learn a whole new career or to get someone to take a chance on teaching me a new career. I don't know, it's hard to say. It was just like I was standing in the kitchen and it just sort of hit me that right now is when you need to start looking. You can't wait anymore.
I ask about that change of heart because so many people struggle with that. They know they need to make a change, and they might try, and as you say, it might be apparent to an employer that perhaps the candidate's heart isn't in this particular position, and they're competing against somebody who is determined to get this job, and it shows. Any tips about how to get clear about that it's time to make that leap?
Yes, I think being pretty clear-eyed about what's going on in your industry. In journalism, It's really hard. I have really good friends who are still journalists. I certainly would never discourage anyone from being a journalist. It's a profession we need now more than ever. It's a foundation of democracy. It's hard to know as there are more layoffs and as the industry grows smaller and smaller and people are asked to do more and more, and things like pay cuts and rising healthcare costs. It was kind of a pressure cooker in a lot of ways, but it is extremely hard to decide when it's time for you to move on, and everybody has to make that for themselves. There were people that had left years before me and looked back at the rest of us like, boy, you guys don't know what you're doing. You really need to get out. You're frogs in the proverbial boiling pot. And others who looked at me as I was leaving and said, how can you leave this? This is the best job you'll ever have. And it's because it is sort of a calling, at least in journalism. So that I think makes it particularly fraught, maybe compared with some other industries. I don't know that there's one answer. I think you just have to, I guess, you have to feel pretty compelled to jump, but also not fully comfortable jumping. I certainly wasn't. I still had misgivings. I still wasn't absolutely certain it was the right time, even as I was doing it. So recognize that some discomfort is going to come with it.
As you made that leap, Michelle, did you turn to others for advice about how to manage the change, colleagues or mentors?
Yes, I talked to a lot of people. That helped a lot, just a tremendous amount. I spoke with people who already worked at OHSU. There were a couple of people who had worked at the Oregonian and had made the shift to OHSU, so they were amazing. One gave me just an excellent, clear-eyed view of what was different about the Oregonian and OHSU, and he turned out to be 100% right. But he also gave me a really good view of the Oregonian and, where their vulnerabilities as a business lay. And I think he was right about that too. And he had an attitude of, don't look back. This is the right thing for you to do, and don't spend a ton of time looking back. And I think that was good advice. The other thing I noticed, I talked to somebody else, a former colleague who went from the Oregonian to Portland State, also just someone I really admire and respect. And he said, it's a job, not a calling, his new job. And I think there's some truth to that, although I do feel more part of a calling here than I think I would most places. But he also said he wouldn't go back. And of all the people I talked to, none of them said, boy, I wish I hadn't left. Nobody said that. And I think you don't see a lot of people go back. I know of one person who left journalism and came back. I'm sure there are others, but you don't see it too often.
When you were reaching out to people, did you find that most folks were willing to talk to you about the transitions that they'd made and to give you advice?
They were wonderful. They spent an hour or more with me, either on the phone or lunch or coffee. I had one person here I contacted and talked with multiple times. They could not have been more generous and kind. And I try to do the same when people contact me about leaving or looking at applying for a job at OHSU.
Now, you mentioned that you found the job just by looking at a job board, Mac's List, and so that was easy, learning about the position. But you also spent, you say in your article, a lot of time preparing for your interviews. Tell us what you did and how you got ready.
I did some research on OHSU, of course, and on the job. It was a little tricky because the job didn't exist at the time. It was a new position and with a new role. But I looked up the people I was going to be interviewing with to learn a little bit about them. I sort of talked myself through being, again, putting my heart into it, being really dedicated, that if this is the job I wanted, I needed to go after it with everything I had and show what I could do.
And you were at mid-career. You'd been at the Oregonian for, I think, more than 20 years. So what advice would you have, Michelle, for a listener who is thinking about making a career change, particularly somebody who might be in their 40s or 50s?
Oh, gosh. I'd been at the Oregonian about 14 or 15 years. I would say take stock of your skills. I worried a lot about changing careers, thinking that I would be starting from absolute scratch doing something else. And that turned out not to be the case at all. A lot of the things I did at the Oregonian and as a journalist and did well are some of the very same things I do in my new job. They might be called something different, but they're very, very similar. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see how transferable my skills were. So not talking yourself through anxiety about how you're going to compete and recognizing that you probably have a lot more skills and a lot more transferable skills than you realize.
You hadn't done a job search for some years when you applied at OHSU. What did you do to brush up your job search skills, or how did you get advice, Michelle, about how to do a search?
It was so easy for me. I really literally just looked at Mac's list. So I don't have a ton of wisdom to offer there. Although I will say the previous really excellent job I applied for, I saw an email or something. Somehow I got word through the grapevine that a person was leaving their job. They were retiring, and it was a great job. And so I contacted him, even though I don't think I'd met him personally, but he knew my husband. And I told him, hey, I understand you're retiring. I might be interested in the job. Would you be willing to have coffee with me to tell me a little bit about it and what you do? And he did. He was very gracious. And that is a job that I got 2 interviews for. I didn't, but the one that I did not get, because I think, in part at least, because I was not convinced myself that I was ready to go. And I learned later from them, this same person was really gracious about giving me some feedback on why I didn't get it. And they had some trepidations about hiring someone directly out of journalism, because he knew it is a pretty big leap, that there's a big adjustment period. I talked about the transferable skills. That's all true. The culture's pretty different, and there is an adjustment period. And I did have quite a bit to learn. And for that particular job, they were able to hire someone who'd already made that leap, and they thought that would be a better fit.
That's a common challenge for people moving from one sector to another, showing to a new employer that the skills that you have are indeed transferable. How did you address that in your conversations at OHSU when you were interviewing for the job? How did you show that you indeed had transferable skills and could work in that new culture and very different environment?
Well, this is funny. My boss really wanted a journalist. She had set out to find a journalist because she wanted somebody who would ask a lot of questions, be pretty tough, not be intimidated by interviewing doctors or very high level people at OHSU. And so my style was, because I wasn't 100% certain I wanted to leave, and I was pretty 100% certain I really needed to move on, but I wasn't certain this was the job. And so I was interviewing her as much as she was interviewing me, and which may not be the best advice for somebody looking for a job. She and I joked about it later that I was not particularly acting like I was, going to bend over backwards to get this job. I was sort of putting her on the spot too. But she loved that. She thought, this is what I need. I need someone who can go in and ask the tough questions and gather information and not be put off. So I sort of just demonstrated that for her through the process, that I was going to be someone who could get good information and be persistent. But again, I'm not sure if I would recommend that exact approach to other people. The one thing I did not do that I would recommend is learning more of the language. I did some research on, what I do now is mostly content marketing and medical writing and medical editing. I had not done much research at all on the lingo of content marketing. And I probably should have. There were times during my first few days where she would mention something and I'd have this blank look on my face like, what's that? And she would have to explain what really turned out to be a pretty basic concept. So I tell people to get some education on that ahead of time.
Well, it's been a great conversation. Michelle, now tell us, what's your number one job hunting tip for our listener?
I would have two, if that's okay.
You could have two.
One would be, I hear a lot of advice out there on, don't tell yourself no. Just apply for jobs, even if you don't think you're qualified. And I would hedge on that. I would say, don't wait until you find a job you're 100% qualified for. Maybe it's 75, but don't apply for jobs you're not qualified for. It takes so much effort and work to apply for and get a job. You don't want to waste your time, and you don't want to waste the employer's time. And then number two is what I talked about before. Put your heart into it. If you really want that job, show it. I think people want to hire someone who wants to be there, who wants to be part of the team, and who shows that they are eager to join you.
Thanks for sharing your story, Michelle. To learn more about Michelle's job search, visit maxlist.org/stories. And check out the Max List website for dozens of other success stories. On the second Friday of every month, we add a new interview with a Max List reader who has found a dream job. Go to maxlist.org/stories. In the meantime, thank you for listening to today's bonus episode of Find Your Dream Job.